Good morning, students. This is Professor Amar Bakodi, and this is the fifth session on Module 2. So, in this session, we are going to study with respect to the reservoir evaporation control. Apart from that, we have already completed all the aspects of evaporation process. So, similarly, we'll go ahead with evapotranspiration and then infiltration. Okay, so let us check out the reservoir evaporation and control. So basically, whenever we say reservoir evaporation and control, so these are basically the factors that affect that particular reservoir evaporation, or these are a few of the control points, or else with which you can actually control, or else you can reduce the amount of evaporation that is going to take place in the reservoir. So to start with, the first is minimum surface area. So already previously a number of times what we have discussed. Imagine this, irrespective of the depth now. Okay, so for the same depth, imagine I have given you two reservoirs. Okay, so even the water level is in the same level. So at this point of time, if you check out the based on the surface area of this particular reservoir, okay, so the evaporation rate is going to be more. So it is a usual sense that as and when the surface area is less, the contact period between the or else the contact area between the sunlight and the water surface will be less, and because of that the evaporation will be less. Similarly, if you take out a larger surface area, then obviously the contact area will be more, and in turn your evaporation rate will be more with respect to that. So that is basically what, as and when we have minimum surface area, then we can reduce the amount of what I can say, evaporation. So that's why usually whenever you visit any kind of reservoirs, okay, so usually those reservoirs will be placed in a valley. Okay, so both the sides there will be mountains, right? Both the sides there will be mountains, and usually here we construct that particular what I can say, dam. Okay, so why we construct the dams over here? The reason being what, here your surface area will be very less. So this is something of your dam which is going to be there. Okay, so if we do this, okay, and if I just try to draw the plan of this, if you see this same section from the top, how it is going to be visible, I'll just try to show you. Okay, so this is, or else I'll just do it in the same way. Okay, so I'll just this is what I can say, the ridge of this particular first mountain. This is the ridge of second mountain, right? So this particular dotted line, if I need to show, is nothing but the river or valley which is going to be there, right? So similarly here, if I say, so this is nothing but a mountain, right? So it is sloping towards this end as it is shown in the section, yeah. And similarly, this is the second mountain which is sloping towards this end, and this is sloping towards the other end. Okay, so now here basically what we are going to get is the water. Okay, imagine this is the river what we have. Okay, and usually whenever we construct a dam over here at the edge, I'll try to show you, sorry for that. Okay, so just okay, imagine this is the river which is flowing in into that particular what I can say, the valley, right? So where your dams usually will be located, usually it will be located on this side. In any one of the valleys, basically you are going to construct a dam something like this. So whenever we constructed the dam like this, what will happen, since the it is valley, right? So the depth of water will be more. If I consider the volume of water that needs to be stored, so at that point of time what will happen, so in the valley usually your depth of water will be more, so surface area will be less when you compare it with the volume of water that has been stored. So even if you check out the nearby, such example, if I need to say, even the Nabil Tirth Dam, what we have, right? So even there you can check out, it is in between that valley and whatever the upstream side is there. So that is the where your water is stored. It is completely between the mountains. So the depth over there is more, whereas the width of that particular dam is very less. Okay, so that helps us in reducing the surface area exposed to the atmosphere, and in turn that will reduce the evaporation rate. Okay, so this is nothing but the explanation for minimum surface area. Okay, now the next thing is regarding the altitude of the reservoir. Okay, so altitude of the reservoir again is related with the atmospheric pressure, what we have already seen. Okay, so atmospheric pressure, whenever we say, okay, imagine again, I'll draw one more thing. Let us say this is mountain, we have over here. Okay, so imagine this is your sea or ocean level. Okay, and this is the land surface what we have. Okay, so this is the land mass which is there. Okay, just for the sake of explanation, a hypothetical condition or explanation, if I need to say, if I construct a dam over here. Okay, so no one will construct a dam for a ocean, that is for sure, but just for the sake of simplicity to understand this altitude of the reservoir, imagine if I what I can say, construct a reservoir at a 0 meter height, that is nothing but at a mean sea level. Then the quantum of air which is basically present over here, the atmosphere, which is going to put its weight on this particular water will be more. Okay, so already we have seen, as and when the this particular depth is sorry, the elevation is less, the air pressure beyond that will be more, and because of that you will have less amount of evaporation. Similarly, if I construct a dam over here, okay, and here let us say it is 200 meter above the ground level. So what is going to happen? So this 200 meter of atmosphere, see here, so this additional weight, because imagine this is the end of our atmosphere. Okay, and if I just try to explain it in this way, the dam which is being constructed at 0 meter, then it have the atmosphere for this entire depth, right? So this entire depth of atmosphere will put its weight downwards into that particular water mass, and because of that what will happen, the amount of evaporation that is going to take place will be less, because the upward sorry the downward pressure will be more over here. Okay, similarly if I do the same thing, construct the dam in 200 meter elevation, so at that point of time what will happen, this downward portion of air mass is not going to put me any weight. So whatever the weight is there, that will be put by only this depth. So that's why obviously here you can imagine, as and when the elevation of the reservoir is less, the quantum of atmosphere above it will be more, and in turn the pressure that will be exerted by the atmosphere on that water surface will be more. Similarly, if it is there at a higher elevation, then the amount of air pressure or atmospheric pressure that is going to apply on that water surface will be less. So in turn your evaporation rate will be more. Okay, so with this explanation what I'd like to say is, altitude of the reservoir will vary. So if the altitude is more, then your evaporation rate will also be more. If altitude is less, your evaporation rate will be less. So the reason for that is I have just explained it over here. Okay, so this is the second point, altitude of the reservoir. Similarly, the third one is planning and underground reservoirs. So that is, if the budget is permitting, so then instead of exposing this entire surface of water to the atmosphere, we can have some underground tanks where your water surface will never be exposed to the sunlight. So at that point of time you can basically save a lot of evaporation that is going to take place over there. So if this third point is going to permit, only if your budget is sufficient, and you can have that particular facility where you can construct a large underground tank or else large underground reservoir, where it will not be exposed to the atmosphere or to the sunlight. Okay, next one is mechanical covers. Okay, so mechanical covers in the sense what usually sometimes what they do is if the depth is more, if it is a pre-planned and all the conditions are ideal, so at that point of time what they do is they use some kind of mechanical covers. Okay, so whenever I say mechanical covers, it is not just a simple layer of cloth or a plastic that will be laid on top of that particular reservoir, but it is basically any kind of material that can be put on top of that water surface so that the evaporation rate will be reduced. So one particular example that I can give you over here is in the recent time, I guess some 5 6 years back, in one of the states of USA. So what they have done is usually because of this what I can say open atmosphere or open surface in the reservoirs. So basically what around 15% of the water stored will be evaporated in a year. Okay, so you can imagine that 15% is a huge amount. When you consider if you are storing 100 liters of water per year, then in that 15 liters of water will be just getting evaporated from the reservoir itself. So to avoid this, what they have done is they have used some this black balls. Okay, what they have done is your simple plastic balls what you use for playing, right? So the similar kind of plastic balls they have used. So they have put millions of such kind of plastic balls on top of this kind of reservoir. Basically there was a huge man-made structure where they used to store that water. So what they have done is they have completely, for example, if I take this as that particular tank just for the sake of explanation, so what they have done is they have completely covered this particular what I can say surface area with those balls. So it is not a mechanical cover, right? So these balls will move with the wind. So if any disturbance is there, so they will just get disturbed and again come back with each other. So ultimately what they want to reduce the exposure of water to the atmosphere or sunlight. So this is how they have actually managed to do that. So they have used all those particular balls and they have just left it on top of that particular storage tank, which was a huge tank, right? So with that, they have reduced the amount of evaporation that was going to take place over there. So this can be in one of the example for mechanical covers. Okay, then use of thin films of oil. So obviously you know that oil whenever we use it, so oil will help us in means oil will float on top of water. So if you put a particular oil, so this if this is the water, right? So below that it is all water which is there. What you can do is you can basically add a type of oil which is inert with respect to other aspects, and if you just a thin layer of oil can be spread over this particular water, then obviously the contact between the sunlight and the water will reduce, and in turn this oil will create a layer which will be intermediating between the water and the sunlight, so because of which the evaporation rate is going to get reduced. So this is again one of the ways of utilizing that. But one of the disadvantages of that will be what, like it reduces the reoxygenation rate of that particular water, and in turn it may affect some of the aquatic life. Okay, and there are some specific chemicals that are especially developed to apply on the reservoir so that they can reduce those evaporation rates. So those itself are nothing but use of monomolecular layers. Okay, so basically these specific chemicals, what they do is they allow the re-aeration to take place, so the reoxygenation process to take place, but the only thing what they disturb is they will not allow the water to pass through from the water till the reserve, means for the evaporation they will not allow that. Okay, so these are basically the points what we need to consider whenever it comes to the reservoir evaporation and control. Okay, so now the second major hydrological loss that we are going to consider is evapotranspiration. Okay, so as the name itself it is suggesting, it is a combination of evaporation and transpiration. So evaporation from the soil or the water body or any of the obstacles which are there on the earth surface, whereas this transpiration will be through the plants. Okay, so this combination itself we usually call it as evapotranspiration. So here I'd like to tell why we are not considering, because till now we have considered or we have discussed the aspects with respect to evaporation, right? But right now why we are not taking only transpiration as separately. The thing is because whenever you want to calculate or whenever you want to determine this transpiration with any of the experimentation or anything, it will become quite difficult. Okay, so and one more thing is, whenever we say transpiration, right? So evaporation and transpiration will be occurring simultaneously from any of the parts. Okay, so if you take a practical real world scenario, so if you take any of the field or any of the, let us say, forest or any of the land, grassland or whatever it is, so basically what will happen, there will be some amount of plants which are present over there. Along with that, even you have the soil. So this evaporation is going to, sorry, this particular vaporization of water is going to take place even from the soil as well as from the plants. Okay, so you cannot differentiate that key. So this is how much is being taking out from the plants, and this is how, what is there from the soil. So this kind of calculations will become quite difficult and cumbersome. Okay, and ultimately for the sake of determination of this loss, you ultimately want how much amount of water is being taken out from the soil or from the plants to the atmosphere in terms of vapor. So that is the whole intention of studying all these losses. Okay, so that's why here what they will do is they combine the evaporation as well as transpiration together to call them as evapotranspiration. And most of the things that we have studied for evaporation will remain true even for the evapotranspiration, but with a bit of differentiation, what I need to tell you. Okay, so that's why we take this term as evapotranspiration. We are not taking the only the transpiration separately. The reason being what, in nature evaporation as well as transpiration will occur simultaneously. So that's why we need to make sure that we consider evaporation for the practical purpose. Okay, so now next thing will be yeah, so the process of evaporation from the land surface and the transpiration from the vegetation are collectively termed as evapotranspiration, and we usually denote it with ET. Yeah, so main factors that are affecting the evapotranspiration are: one is supply of energy, that is solar radiation. So even for evaporation we had the same solar radiation concept, where we have explained how that solar radiation will affect the evaporation process. So similarly here, the solar energy, as and when the solar energy is there, so then only the plants are going to utilize that solar energy to produce its food, right? So based on that, the water which is present in that particular trees will be taken out through the stigmata of the leaves. Okay, stigmata is nothing but an what I can say, a part, or what I can say, yeah, a part of a leaf, where from which your water is going to get ejected from the leaves. Okay, so in turn that will get evaporated immediately. So that itself we call it as sorry, transpiration. Okay, so that's why solar energy or solar radiation is going to play an important role whenever it comes to evapotranspiration. Similarly, we have ability to transport vapor away, that is wind speed and humidity. So already we have discussed sufficiently on wind speed, okay, what it does, and also we have discussed regarding the humidity. So various terminologies that are coming under this humidity, and how we are going to go ahead with that. So all those things we have already studied with that. Okay, next is supply of moisture at the evaporating surface. So supply of moisture at the evaporating surface, in the sense what, how much amount of water is being released from that stigmata, and it is coming onto the surface of the leaf. So from there itself the evaporation is going to take place. So the size, shape, and the properties of that particular plant are going to affect the rate of evapotranspiration. Okay, so apart from this, basically if I need to say, all the meteorological factors, apart from all the other things that we have studied for evaporation, so everything, every aspect will come even with the evapotranspiration process also. So whenever if they ask what are the factors affecting evapotranspiration, okay, so you need to write the meteorological factors which were already discussed for the evaporation, plus these particular factors which are specific to the transpiration process which are there. Okay, so if you check out this particular figure, what they are saying, so regarding the evapotranspiration, here also they have said it is transpiration plus evaporation. So whenever I take practically what actually happens over here, if I consider, yeah, let us say this. So if you check out, so what will happen if this is the amount of rainfall that is falling, okay, on this particular ground which has been shown over here. Imagine this as the catchment area. Okay, whenever this rainfall is occurring, what will happen? So this rainfall will fall randomly on the plants as well as on the soil. You have grass, and even if you have any boulders or something, for example, you have any such big rock boulders which are there, imagine that. So it will fall on all these things, okay, randomly, whatever the things are going to be present on the earth surface. So your water is going to fall on that. Okay, so once this water has fallen on this, what will happen next? So first few part of the water will be absorbed by the soil. Okay, if it is not moist, then it is going to absorb that moisture and it is going to become saturated. Okay, so once this gets saturated, what will happen? So even if the rainfall is still existing, then the water will get slowly start to percolate. Okay, so it is going to slowly start to percolate. So this is nothing but the infiltration part of it. Similarly, if still the water is excess in the rainfall, then that runoff is going to start. Okay, so this is the basic concept of what I have told you even at the start of the second module, okay, in the introduction part. Now whenever it comes to this evapotranspiration, what will happen? The evaporation is simultaneously going to occur from the trees as well as from the grass. Okay, so you can call it as yeah, here as they have shown. So this is from trees transpiration and this is from grass which is there. Okay, so simultaneously it is going to occur from there. Apart from that, the evaporation is going to occur even from these rock boulders which are there, if any moisture is available on that. Apart from that, even the soil which is surrounding these particular plants, because you can check out in between the plants you always have soil. Yeah, so even in between the grass you have always have soil. So you cannot say here I'm going to only determine the amount of transpiration which is going to be there. No, you cannot do that, because soil and plants, whenever it comes to its particular existence, they are existing together. So that's why here we cannot segregate the evaporation and transpiration separately. So that's why we for the sake of practical purpose, to get what is the total amount of water which has been lost through the total evapotranspiration and this particular infiltration, so ultimately whatever runoff is coming, that is the addition for us. So that is actually what is needed for this particular hydrological subjects. Okay, so that's why with this I can say that that is why we consider evapotranspiration as a whole and not transpiration as a separate aspect. Okay, so this is about the brief introduction about evapotranspiration. Now, for the evapotranspiration, okay, so there are a few terminologies that we need to understand to take the concept of this evapotranspiration for the practical applications. Okay, so keeping that in mind, so the first term that is going to come is potential evapotranspiration. We abbreviate it as PET, that is potential evapotranspiration. Okay, so it is the evapotranspiration that would occur from a well vegetated surface when moisture supply is not limiting. So what do you mean by this? So let us try to draw a figure to explain this particular thing. So imagine you have, let us say for the sake of simplicity, what I am doing is I am taking a chunk of soil. Okay, and in this I am going to say that if the water supply is not limited, that is if you have full water supply which is going to be there, if this is completely filled with water. So what the sentence is saying, if there is no limitation for the supply of water in the soil. Okay, imagine this entire soil is now saturated with water. Okay, and if I have, let us say, some plants over here. Okay, I have some plants which have been planted on this particular ground. So at this point of time, what will happen? Yeah, so now if you check out what is happening right now, the basically how the concept is going to work here, there are two parts. Okay, one thing is what, the total water that you are going to supply. Okay, so what I can say, total water what I am going to supply will be utilized for two purposes whenever it comes to your evapotranspiration concept, if I need to say. Okay, one thing is the water will be stored in soil. Okay, and next thing is uh, the plants are going to use these particular water. Okay, so here what I want to say is irrespective of how much quantity of water I add into the soil, okay, there is a limitation at which the plants can actually take up that water. Okay, if yeah, just for the sake of explanation, 1 2 3 4 5, okay, so we have 5 plants here, and if I add 500 liters of water per day into the soil so that the plants can absorb all the water, it is not possible, right? So because each plant can intake only a specific amount, or else which is required by the plant, only that much quantity of what I can say, that particular water will be taken up by these plants. Okay, so that's why whatever the amount of water is being taken up by the plants, if I just show you like this, if a small quantity of water is being taken by the plants, something like this. Okay, so at that point of time what will happen, only this small quantity which has been taken up by the plants will be coming out as the transpiration. Okay, only that thing will be coming out as transpiration, right? And remaining water which is already stored in this soil will also get evaporated, so at that point of time whatever the evaporation is going to take place from this particular soil, you are going to call that yeah, that is nothing but what, your evaporation, right? So together, so this particular evaporation from the soil and transpiration from the plants, you are going to call that as evapotranspiration. Okay, and when you are going to call it as potential evapotranspiration is whenever your soil is completely saturated with water. Okay, so this completely saturated with water itself is being represented as what is the evapotranspiration that would occur from a well vegetated surface when moisture supply is not limited. So what this moisture supply is not limited is indicating you have sufficient quantity of water. So how you are going to measure that sufficient quantity of water, that is with the help of what, if the soil is completely saturated, then you are going to call that as, and in simplest of term with this particular explanation, what I would like to say is if you want to define this potential evapotranspiration, then what will happen, if the condition should be what, your soil should be completely saturated, and on top of that you have planted some trees, grass, or whatever that is. So at that point of time whatever the evapotranspiration altogether which is going to occur from this entire section, you are going to call that as potential evapotranspiration. Okay, I'll repeat once again. Potential evapotranspiration is one, it is nothing but than evapotranspiration itself, but the only condition is your soil should be saturated, or there should not be any moisture supply should be in a sufficient quantity, it should not be limiting. So if that is the case, then you are going to call that as potential evapotranspiration. Now the next term that comes is actual evapotranspiration. So it is actual evapotranspiration, and we abbreviate it as what, AET. We abbreviate it as AET. Okay, so keeping this in mind, AET, now if you check out what will happen here, the real evapotranspiration occurring in the specific situation is called actual evapotranspiration. Now check out. So in the potential evapotranspiration, I told you this particular entire soil should be completely saturated, right? But right now, if you check out this AET, or in actual case, what will happen? Most of the time, the soil will not be completely saturated in the practical cases. In the practical cases, the soil will not be completely saturated. This is for sure. The soil will not be completely saturated all the time. So at that point of time, if I just try to say, imagine, so it is now, if we can check out, this is partially saturated, the soil is partially saturated. So at this point of time whatever the evapotranspiration is going to occur from this particular section, you are going to call that as what, actual evapotranspiration. I hope you got that. If the water is completely saturated, if the soil is completely saturated, then the evapotranspiration that is going to occur, you call that as potential evapotranspiration. And similarly, if the soil is not completely saturated, that is in various stages of moisture content if the soil is having, so at that point of time, whatever the evapotranspiration that is going to occur over here, you are going to call that as actual evapotranspiration. Now here also you can check it out. There is one condition where you can write it as your AET will be is equals to PET. Your AET is equals to PET. When this condition is going to exist, whenever this soil is completely saturated with water, at that time only your actual evapotranspiration will be is equals to potential evapotranspiration. I repeat myself, only there is one case at which your actual evapotranspiration will be is equals to potential evapotranspiration. And what is that condition? If the soil is completely saturated with water, only at that point of time your AET will be is equals to what? PET. So this is what you should understand. So just for the sake of again explaining this, imagine if the soil moisture content is 100%. So at that point of time, theoretically we call this as what? PET. The evapotranspiration that is going to occur is, we call it as PET. Whereas to explain AET, so again it will be 0 to 100, or else sorry 0 to 99% if the soil moisture is there in the soil, and at that point of time the evapotranspiration that is going to occur, you are going to call that as AET. Okay, so only when the percentage is 100%, the moisture content is 100%, at that point of time your AET is equals to going to become PET. Okay, so this is the basic explanation or meaning of potential evapotranspiration and actual evapotranspiration. Now the next thing that comes is your field capacity. Next thing that is coming is the terminology is field capacity. Okay, it is the maximum quantity of water that the soil can retain against the force of gravity. Okay, field capacity is the maximum quantity of water that the soil can retain against the force of gravity. Field capacity is the maximum quantity of water that the soil can retain against the force of gravity. So till now what I simply was saying regarding the saturated water, or sorry, saturated soil, right? 100% of water should remain. So basically what will happen here, if I want to explain this, what I'll do is I'll take a soil section. Okay, imagine in this, if I take this as the water, or else sorry, what I'll do is I'll reduce this. Okay, imagine this is a block of soil. Okay, and on top of this, imagine the rainfall is occurring. The rainfall is occurring on top of this. So at that point of time, what will happen? The first, what will do? The soil will absorb that particular moisture. Okay, and it will get moistened. Okay, the moisture content of the soil will increase. Now if even then the continuous water supply or rainfall is there, then what will happen? This entire soil mass is going to get what? Saturated. So it will be completely, all the voids as well as the soil particles are going to be completely saturated with water. Okay, so this is one part. Now still, if the water is still rainfall is occurring, at that point of time what will happen? The infiltration will start. So the soil has already withheld whatever quantity of water that it can hold within itself. Okay, so even then the excess water, if anything is coming out, then what will happen? Then the infiltration is going to start. Okay, so the next part is going to be your runoff. So that we are going to consider in the next section. So don't consider runoff over here. This is just to explain the field capacity parameter. I am giving you this particular explanation. Rainfall is occurring on a soil block. Initially the soil will absorb all the moisture, it will get completely saturated, and if again still the excess water is there, then because of the gravity what will happen? The water is going to get infiltrated. So once this water is going to get infiltrated, what will happen? Imagine this rainfall has stopped now. Imagine this rainfall has stopped now. So at this point of time what will happen to the soil mass? Okay, so based on the gravity, okay, few amount of water is still going to get infiltrated. Okay, the few amount of water is still going to get infiltrated. So once, even after a few instances, right, so even that infiltration will stop. At this point of time, whatever the moisture content of this particular soil mass is there, then that moisture content you call it as field capacity. That moisture content you call it as field capacity of the soil. And this field capacity of the soil will be different from for different soils. Okay, so if you check out your black cotton soil, so it bulges whenever it absorbs water, right? So that actually has more amount of field capacity. And if you consider that with a red soil, okay, morum, if I need to say, so it has more voids. But because of that more voids, what will happen, it will allow the water to infiltrate through because of the gravity. Okay, so there your red soil will have less field capacity than the black cotton soil. So like this, so based on the characteristics of the soil, your field capacity is going to vary for various soils. Okay, now with this explanation, again I'll read out that definition so that we can understand. Field capacity is the maximum quantity of water that the soil can retain. It is the maximum amount of water the soil can retain against the force of gravity. Against the force of gravity, that is, it has already allowed whatever the infiltration of water is happening because of that gravity. Okay, already that has taken place. So leaving that, how much quantum of water can be withheld by this soil mass, you are going to call that as field capacity. I hope this is clear for you. Okay, now the next thing is permanent wilting point. Okay, so permanent wilting point is the moisture content of a soil at which the moisture is no longer available in sufficient quantity to sustain for the plants. Okay, I'll repeat this once again. Permanent wilting point is the moisture content of the soil at which the moisture is no longer available in sufficient quantity to to sustain the plants. So what do I mean by that? So here, for the sake of explanation, I have told you 0 to 99%, right? So even if the soil moisture content is 0%, it indicates what? It is completely dry. So there is no evapotranspiration that is occurring. So similarly here, if the moisture content of this particular soil, imagine if it goes below a specific percentage, okay, just for the sake of explanation I am telling you, imagine if the moisture content of soil is less than 20%. So this number is just a random thing, just for the sake of explanation. Imagine if the moisture content of the soil is less than 20%. So at that point of time, what will happen, even if you plant the trees over here, the plants will not be able to take up the water from the soil for their growth, because already the moisture content is less, and these moisture content is basically withheld by the soil particles. Okay, again if I need to explain even that concept, so if you take, these are the soil molecules, imagine that. Okay, just for the sake of simplicity, you imagine this as the soil particles. Okay, so whenever I say the water will be stored in soil or soil is saturated, what will happen here, there are two ways in which the soils can be saturated. One is the soil particle itself will absorb the water, that is one part. Second part will be the water will be stored inside these particular voids. Right now you can see the voids in between the particles, right? So the voids, into these voids the water will be stored. Okay, and these are the two ways in which the saturation is going to occur. Okay, so at this point of time, whenever we say the plants are going to extract the water from the soil, usually that water will be from these voids. Okay, the soil will not be the plants will not be able to extract the water from these soil particles. The plants will not be able to extract the water from these soil particles. They usually take up the water from these voids. Okay, and whenever the moisture content of the soil will start to get reduced, what will happen, initially the amount of water that is stored in these voids itself will reduce. Then the moisture content of the soil particles will start to reduce. Okay, so that's why if a moisture content of the water goes soil goes beyond a particular limit, at that point of time all these voids which are filled with water have been exhausted. So there is no water inside these voids at that point of time, even though the soil has moisture, because these particles have absorbed some of the water. but these plants will not be able to extract that water from these soil particles. No, they cannot do that. They can only extract the water from these voids. So at that point of time, what will happen, if this permanent wilting point is reached up, then what will happen, the plants are not able to extract that water, so that's why the plant is going to die off. So even after, let us say, a week, if you put water, so even then the plant is not going to recover, because already the damage has been done to it. Okay, so if that is the case, then you are going to call that point as permanent wilting point. So I'll read this once again. The permanent wilting point is the moisture content of soil at which the moisture is no longer available in sufficient quantity to sustain the plants. Okay, so I guess this is clear for you. Okay, now the last one is the difference in these two moisture contents is called available water. Now check out just now what I have said, just for the sake of the difference in these two moisture contents, in the sense what, your field capacity and permanent wilting point. Field capacity and permanent wilting point. So the difference between these two moisture contents are what we call it as available water. Okay, so what does that mean? Just for the sake of simplicity, imagine that for this field capacity you have moisture content at 80%. Imagine that one soil has field capacity at a moisture content of 80% and the permanent wilting point is of 20%. So then what will be the available water at that point of time? It will be only how much? 80 minus 20 is 60%. So that 60% of water is, it indicates what? 60% of water is available in these voids now. So only this much amount of water the plants can be utilized. Okay, so that's why we call that as what? Available water. So the difference between the field capacity and the permanent wilting point, you are going to define that as what? Available water. So these are some of the terminologies that you need to understand thoroughly to use this evapotranspiration concept for the practical purposes.